Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on this ministerial statement in order to address some of the fears on national security that are currently being felt in communities around the country. Unfortunately, the recent consideration of national security issues by this parliament has occurred in the context of a national fever dream of fear and paranoia about our Islamic community. In recent times, we've seen sections of the media, both mainstream and social media, caught up in a hysteria about our Islamic community. We've also seen comments from members of parliament, almost universally representing areas with very small Islamic communities, attacking the choice of some women in the Islamic community to wear the burqa, the niqab or the hijab. The public statements of politicians and media reports relating to our Islamic community have real-world consequences. I recently visited members of my Islamic community for Friday prayers and heard firsthand the increase in harassment being experienced by members of this Australian community on public transport, in public places, and most depressingly of all, in our schools. As a member representing an electorate with a large Islamic community, I want to send a very clear message on this issue. No one in Australia has anything to fear from our Islamic community. There are almost 500,000 Muslims in Australia. In contrast, there are a bare handful of perverted fanatics in this country who would seek to hijack this religion and seek to commit criminal acts in its name. The recent legislative actions of this parliament and the recent activities of our intelligence and law enforcement agencies are not targeted towards the Islamic community in our country. They are targeted towards a vanishingly small minority of individuals whose actions demonstrate that they are planning or supporting terrorist actions. My electorate is home to a diverse range of Islamic communities from a range of ethnic backgrounds. However, while these communities may be diverse, every one of them shares the same hopes and dreams for their future and the future of this country as other Australians. I'm proud of the mark that Muslims have made in our community in Melbourne's West, and I want to take this opportunity to highlight some of these contributions. One of our favourite Islamic sons has made his mark literally on the Australian rules football field. As a product of the Spotswood Football Club and the Western Jets, Richmond Tigers star Bashar Houli is a symbol to the rest of the nation of the success of multiculturalism in Melbourne's West and the enormous contribution that our Islamic community makes to it. He's been breaking down the barriers of ignorance between Muslims and the broader community through his entire career. As Martin Flanagan recently wrote in The Age, when Bashar was 16, he captained the Vic Metro team at the National Championships. His roommate liked loud music and had the TV on all the time. In the end, Bashar told his teammate that he was a Muslim and he had to pray, and could he turn the TV down a little. His teammate was so impressed that he got Bashar to talk to the whole team about being a Muslim. That, said Bashar Houli, was the turning point. Since this turning point, Bashar has worked hard to make one of our great Australian institutions, footy, more accessible to Australians from all walks of life. He founded the Bashar Houli Academy for junior players of an Islamic background with high potential to inspire and assist the new generation of Muslim leaders to live their dream of playing in the AFL. Sport is the great leveller in our society, one of those places where people from all backgrounds can leave the everyday traffic lanes of their ethnic, religious and class backgrounds and engage on an equal basis with people from backgrounds that they wouldn't ordinarily be exposed to. In this way, institutions like footy are some of the most important places to promote an increased understanding between the diverse groups in our community, and Bashar's efforts in this respect cannot be underestimated. Bashar's family are still active in the Newport Islamic Society, as are business and community leaders from the surrounding suburbs in my electorate. The Newport Islamic Society is currently working to expand its presence in our community through the construction of a new mosque designed by internationally acclaimed Australian architect Glenn Murcutt. When completed, it will be one of the most striking pieces of architecture in Melbourne's West, something in which our whole community will be able to take pride. A centre for prayer, learning and community activities, the mosque's design is dominated by two soaring wings leading to its entrance. This design is intended to symbolise the mosque's, quote, open arms to all members of our Australian society. In a building with such spiritual significance to my local Islamic community, the symbolic message of its design cannot be missed. Near the mosque in Altona North is the home of Osama Abdul Zaid, who was this year elected the Premier of the Victorian Youth Parliament. Advocating 24-hour public transport in Melbourne's West in that youth parliament, he is an intelligent, articulate and passionate about the community he lives in. He's proud of his religious faith, just as he's proud of Australia, telling ABC Breakfast News recently, quote, I love my country. My parents are from the Middle East, but I come from Australia. We're very multicultural, we're very welcoming. In my school, there are more than 60 nationalities, and it shows the diversity of our state. I know Osama personally, and I know that he has a very promising future in front of him. Travel a little further north in Sunshine, and it's hard to miss the distinctive Sunshine Mosque in the skyline of Melbourne's West. It's home to the Turkish Cypriot community of Sunshine, acting as a community hub as well as a place of worship. It's places like the Sunshine Mosque where we see some of the most altruistic charity work of Melbourne's West. The community spirit of members in this mosque are clear from the wide range of charitable works that are discussed at the mosque's iftars every year. The Australian Light Foundation in Tottenham is another Islamic group in my electorate that the community can take pride in. As well as being a centre for worship, it has recently coordinated aid programs in South Sudan, Ethiopia and Iraq, as well as more locally, helping newly arrived asylum seekers get settled into the community by providing resourcing and support. It aims to provide a positive image of Islamic culture to the wider community of Melbourne's West. These organisations are just some of the Islamic communities throughout Melbourne's West that contribute to making our society a better place every day. They're examples of the richness of culture and spirit found in the Islamic communities in Australia, and I'm proud to have them in my electorate. As their representative in this place, it pains me that members of these communities feel that in recent times they have been treated by other members of the community as objects of suspicion, that in situations both subtly and overtly, their patriotism has been questioned. It is in this atmosphere that the recent reforms to our national security legislation have been debated. It is important, however, to note that the bill that was debated in the House today was not developed in response to the recent events in Iraq or Syria. They are not a response to the heightened security environment and terror raids we've seen in recent weeks. These reforms are the result of a long-standing committee of inquiry into Australia's national security laws initiated by the previous Labor government. It was initiated under Attorney General Nicola Roxon, my predecessor in Gellibrand and a staunch advocate of the rights for the Islamic community in groups in Melbourne's West in May of 2012. The committee's inquiry into the architecture of Australia's national security legislation was extensive. 236 submissions were invited into an inquiry that took a year to complete. The committee released recommendations for reform of these laws in June 2013, and it is these recommendations that were originally introduced by the Abbott government into the Senate in July of this year. These recommendations, however, required further consideration before they were to become law. It is important to ensure that ensuring our national security agencies have the power available to keep Australians safe. But equally, these powers must be subject to a thorough oversight and accountability mechanisms to ensure that they are being used appropriately. And they must be properly balanced against the importance of protecting the human rights of all members of our community. So Labor, through the committee process, initiated a review into the impact of the changes proposed to our national security laws. In writing its report, the committee strongly recommended 18 amendments to this bill. Many of these amendments ensured that the intelligence operations or any related criminal sanctions were subjected to additional constraints or balances. Labor, through the committee process, advocated strongly for these amendments. Last week we saw the introduction of these amendments into the Senate with the support of both the government and the opposition. But let me be clear, the bipartisan support for the bill that was debated in the Parliament today is a result of a detailed and thorough policy process during which differing views clashed and Labor's concerns over aspects of the reforms were frequently put. It is unfortunate that this lengthy process has been conflated in the public debate with recent security events. The average man or woman on the street sees the beheading of James Foley on the other side of the world, sees the armed guards walking around Parliament House, sees the changes in the powers of our intelligence agencies contained with the national security reforms that were debated today, and assumes that they are part of the same equation. It is critical that we bring clarity to this confusion, that we separate the elements out of the equation and allay the fears of the groups in our community. Creating and continuing lines of communication is essential to stop the communities in our society from being isolated and to stop our Islamic communities from feeling alienated. Initiatives like the one occurring next door to us, where the Muslim Leadership Program, part of the Centre for Dialogue at La Trobe University and the Islamic Society of Australia, have brought a series of young leaders to Parliament House to hear from their representatives and make their views clear to them, are important in this respect. Because it is a problem both for our community and our law enforcement agencies if our Islamic community feels targeted as a group by our response to the threat of terrorism. As leaders in our community, the members of this Parliament must work together to counter this confusion within the Australian community. We must ensure that on one hand, every domestic terror threat is treated by our law enforcement agencies with the seriousness that it deserves, but also that every Muslim walking the streets of my electorate who is subject to violence or intimidation is also protected by our legal system. I'm proud to represent the communities that produced Bashar Houli and Osama Abu Zaid, as well as many others who work within our community to make Melbourne's West such a diverse and wonderful place to live. It pains me greatly that these communities feel targeted as a result of these laws. All of us in this place must work together to ensure that our Islamic community and the Muslim members of our society are treated with respect and tolerance they deserve while we fight this important security threat.
I think